Good afternoon. Welcome to UK Column News. It's Tuesday, the 5th of May 2015, just after 1 o'clock, and I'm your host, Mike Robinson. And with me on Skype is Guy Taylor. Now, just before I bring Guy on, I just wanted to say vote Labour. Well, every other sucker is saying it, so I thought I'd add my voice. But if you don't like that, you could vote UKIP, but only where the Tories don't win. And if you're in any doubt about voting Tory, just think about what they've done and think about what's at stake. Well, let's see what happens on Thursday. But what we know is that nobody's going to win. Let's not think about any of these mainstream parties. If you're going to vote, vote independent. That's my advice anyway, if you're not voting Labour. Guy, what do you make of this charade that's going on at the moment?
Well, it's...
Yeah.
Hello, can
yes,
you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. It's a charade, isn't it? The whole Russell Brand thing now, I just find hysterical. Really, it's where are we going with all this? He is a brand, of course. So
he is a brand, indeed. Indeed. Right, now let's get on to some more serious subjects, because obviously last Friday, the 1st of May, we all met outside Ye Old Trip to Jerusalem pub or inn or whatever it is, but unfortunately it was closed.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there with that, with the timings. It wasn't down to me to get it open at that time in the morning. I think Mark had been down and spoken to the people down there, so I don't know. But it was a bit early for a drink anyway.
Yeah. So the first thing that we noticed was that the court case for Tom was moved to the Family and Youth Court. But what was that about? Was that some attempt just to put it to a location which is smaller than in terms of the public? The ability of the public to get in, smaller than other venues, or why was it moved there?
Well, we've no idea really, Mike. I think you're correct. That's why. I mean, there was only 10 of us allowed in the court, so it was a very small venue. And again, it complete, in the Family and Youth Court. What the hell was it doing there? They knew how much public interest there was in it. It should have had, facilitated for a larger crowd.
I mean, it was a reasonable crowd that turned up, and everybody was extremely well behaved, at least initially. Now, obviously, you went into the court, so and I'm sure you've heard what happened outside by now. But everything was going very, very well outside and very calmly until G4S staff seemed to get involved, and Liz Watson, for example, absolutely assaulted and pushed against the glass on just inside the court door, and that started the initial calls for the police to do their jobs and arrest the G4S guy there. And then another person was quite more significantly assaulted, in the sense he was ejected from another doorway and landed on his face, really quite aggressively. And I believe that G4S member of staff was arrested by the police. So in general, the police they didn't have much to do for the day, but where they were taking action, they were very, very calm and very polite, as were everybody that was supporting Tom. Now, but of course, what wasn't clear for everybody outside for most of the day was what was going on inside, and the day began with the judge not turning up for about 2 hours, and that seemed to resolve itself once a claim was made outside the court in front of the police that, in fact, if the judge didn't appear within 5 minutes, or within 30 minutes, sorry, that the crowd would take the court. In fact, the judge appeared after 5 minutes subsequently, and then there appears to be a hearing of some kind. What was the nature of this hearing? At least, what was this hearing supposed to be, Guy?
Right. Well, the hearing was a straightforward hearing, which normally takes all the ones I've been to take between 5 and 30 minutes, and it's straightforward for an extension of time to appeal. So what that means is, whenever a case has been judged and there's been an order made in a case, you have to appeal within 30 days. If you appeal out of time, which I'd say perhaps 50% of cases are out of time, then you have to make an application for an extension of time to appeal. So that's simply what it was about. That's all it was about. It was a very straightforward thing. would he grant an extension of time for Tom to appeal? That went on for some, as you know, 5-6 hours, whatever it was in the end. We were there, and it was stretched right out. And the interesting developments were because of course, as you said, the judge wasn't there, nor was the CPS, until after about an hour and a half. And then they suddenly appeared, as you said, people were starting to say they were going to take the call. But when the judge entered the room, he entered the room in civvies, and the prosecutor was there in her wig and gown. So the moment he came through the door in his civvies, she took her wig and her gown off, which, whatever significance that has. When the court case started, Michael Bernassia, who was there with Tom, working for Tom on the case, was refused audience by the judge. So Michael had to whisper in Tom's ear, and then Tom had to repeat what Michael had said, and it becomes very sort of comedy factor when this is going on. But of course, Tom has got a bit of short-term memory problems, so when Michael was saying a long sentence, he was having trouble repeating it. So Michael just got the volume of his voice up louder and louder and louder. So in the end, everybody in the room could hear what he was saying, and then hear Tom misinterpreting, bless him, in some parts, what he'd been saying. So the whole thing became a charade. But then, of course, while it was going on, Tom started questioning the fees, and that was when Liz jumped up and said that it was a public intervention for the court's attention, that the judge had made an error in law and in fact regarding the claims online. At that, the judge started to flap and ran out of the room, saying that he wanted Liz removed from the proceedings. So he went out of the room while Liz was taken out of the place. Then he came back in, and the charade continued. Then all of a sudden, as you were saying, when the crowd outside was shouting, "Do your job, do your job," of course it was reverberating into the courtroom. And the judge was sat there most perturbed, because there we are, his bosses, the public, were outside shouting, "Do your job" to somebody. And with this, he got up and flounced out like a girl, really, saying he couldn't sit there with all that noise going on. So that went on, and again we then continued. And I thought, well, he's got to come out with it's a very straightforward thing to give an extension of time to an appeal. You know, I've been in a courtroom which has been granted in 10 minutes, and of course this got dragged on, and it became 3 o'clock. Then it became 4 o'clock, and then I could see that the nature of the game was not to give it out till the end. Well, he didn't even do that, because then he said to Tom that he'd notify him by email. So, you know, there we go. I mean, the bottom line of it, Mike, was we were there really offering them the opportunity to do their job properly and to make sure this was done proficiently. And, of course, you know, we've put it so it was put back into their arena. And, of course, you know, we're still awaiting what he's got to say about it, which is ridiculous in all the circumstances. And it just goes to show the childish nature of what's going on in these courts now, because a lot of the self-litigants and the people who are there, you know, they probably had more court time than a lot of solicitors nowadays, because a lot of this stuff is done out of court.
Yeah, pretty spectacular. So he has failed to make any kind of judgment on this issue, very simple issue, as you've said, and he's going to notify everybody by email at some indeterminate point in the future. And in the meantime, everything just sort of sits, just static until that point.
Yeah, that's right. And so, you know, I mean, really, what on earth's going on when it's just if they take 5-6 hours to make an application? In fact, the bank's lawyer said that they weren't objecting to the extension of time. So, you know, I mean, and that can be taken off the court transcripts from the beginning. So there was nothing really but what they tended to do, they dragged it out by going right back through Tom's accounts, right back to 1989. Now, every time Michael, through Tom, had tried to make a point or tried to use a reference, the judge would say, "Oh, that's I've read that. That's already in your skeleton argument, so there's no need to read that again." So he was saying that to virtually everything that was being said. But yet when the bank started handing over pieces of paper which had accounts and wrong account numbers on. They were determined to talk through each year going back from 1989 right through to 2012, I think it was. So, and that just soaked up a couple of hours, really. So the whole proceedings were a farce. But I mean, we've come to the point now where we know these people aren't operating in our best interests, and so we were there to offer them the opportunity to do the right thing. And unfortunately, all they did was procrastinate and obfuscate the usual story when we go into these criminal proceedings, which are private proceedings.
Okay. Well, let's just remind everybody who Tom is up against here, because of course it's UK Asset Resolution Limited, which is the government-owned company which took over the mortgage. The mortgages from Bradford and Bingley and from Mortgage Express and from NRAM as well. So that's who we're up against. Asset strippers, I think, is the word that you've used in the past, Guy.
Yeah, exactly right. That's what they are. They're just an asset stripping company.
Sorry.
No, go on, Mike.
But of course, this story did actually make it into the mainstream. But I think the biggest fail goes to the Daily Fail for their coverage of the day, alleging that people were storming the courts and so on, and really not quite getting to grips, as they never do, with what this case is about. And we've got to just state once again that what this case is about is a bank which, as Tom has demonstrated in his latest video on YouTube, changed the terms and conditions of his mortgage without his agreement and without informing him, and removed the endowment aspect of the mortgage, which would have hopefully resulted in a lump sum at the end, which would have paid off the alleged £43,000 outstanding mortgage debt. But the Daily Mail article here really not getting to grips with this story at all. And I suppose that is a general situation across the mainstream media, although the Nottingham Post seems to have been getting it reasonably correct in the last while. But I mean, I suppose, what do we expect here?
Well, this is the point with the mainstream media. You know, they've just been shown to be part of an arm of the establishment. The people there were from all over the country, and they're all different shapes, sizes, ages. You know, we're not the local golf club or the local football club coming down there. You know, these are people from every walk of life. You know, we've had criminal lawyers that were operating in our interests on that day, and for the mainstream media, or for the Daily Mail to put that out is ridiculous. And it'll be shown how false that was by all the people that did the filming and photographing of the day. Because when all them clips are put together, then people will see exactly what sort of day it was and how jovial everyone was, and how it was only when the G4S guy calls the scene with someone that actually happened. So, you know, it's going to be proven as being farcical, and anyone who takes an interest, you know, I mean, where were they on that day then, and why weren't they talking to the people the same as all the individuals going around filming on their own behalves? But we will get like a compendium of all the clips and put it together to show people what it was really about that day. And you know, woe betide the mainstream media, because they're just clearly exposing themselves. And the Daily Mail, I'm appalled what they've done there.
Well, indeed, and if they have falling circulations, if newspapers in general have falling circulations, they've only got themselves to blame. Now, you sent me a document yesterday, which was this one, which is a court document, and you wanted to highlight a particular paragraph in this within this section, the execution of the warrant of possession, and where they are describing what they call free men on the land. And it was the last sentence of this, which was quite fascinating. The Federal Bureau of Investigation considers sovereign citizen extremists, which they say is, or they're quoting Wikipedia. Actually, Wikipedia claims that sovereign citizen extremists is a synonym for free men on the land, to be part of a domestic terrorist movement. So they're really, whoever's put this document, again, quoting from Wikipedia in a court document, in order to, libel people that are really, as they say, a loose group of people. So what is going on here? Is this what we've come to?
Well, this is what we've come to, and what this is actually about. There's a gentleman in Luton who has had his home stolen off him by the bank, and he's gone back in and taken repossession of it, and they've taken him out. The police have arrested him, and then they've let him go without any charges. So he's gone back and he's done it again because it's his house, and he can prove all the errors that have been going on in his case. So what he's done is he's taken them to court to put a claim in against them and stop them, coming around and keep dragging him out. So it's the bank he's attacked, put a claim in against, I believe for an injunction. Well, their solicitors have come back with that nonsense, and they've also said that he'd stopped and have been part of stopping an eviction somewhere else. Now, I don't think this gentleman has anything to do with the Freeman on the Land movement anyway. He's just a gentleman who wants to be free and operates under the law. So to accuse him of anything or labelling him, as a free man on the land as opposed to what? A slave on the sea? I mean, are you a card-carrying free man on the land? I mean, it's really got to the point where they must be scared to be throwing such nonsense into the mix. And this is defending a court case. This is Mike. So.
Well, indeed, and I mean, it has to be said that there have been a lot of people calling themselves free men in the land over the years. Some of them have done very well in courts. Some of them haven't done so well. But of course, each person is an individual, and they do their best based on the knowledge and experience that they've built up. And of course, it's been a learning process for many people. But at the end of the day, we've got to remember that this has always been a reaction to the corruption and the illegality of activities that have been going on in the courts. Is that an unfair thing to say?
That's exactly right. That's spot on. And again, going back to Tom's case there, you can see how the cancer patient situation still keeps cropping up when it's not true, yeah? And so really I think they're unable to explain any merit in their position because we've taken apart their paperwork, their game, their paperwork. And so now they're coming out with these ludicrous statements calling us domestic terrorists. I mean, that is a very serious thing to be stating. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the Conservative Party are domestic terrorists. So are the Liberal Party. So are the UKIP probably. So are Labour. They're the ones who've been bombing foreign countries and putting their name to things. Certainly not people who are just trying to stand under their own rights under common law.
Right. So what's the next steps for Tom then? Obviously, there's this judgment could go either way. If he doesn't get the extension for the right to appeal, what happens next?
Well, if he doesn't get the extension for the right to appeal, we're looking at moving this into the criminal realm, and I've already discussed with people getting a grand jury to put a grand jury together in Nottingham to put a presentment to them. Where does it go? They have to enforce. If they believe that they've got legitimacy to come for Tom, then they better come up with the correct paperwork, which we know they won't have, and it's that simple. It's making a claim is one thing, enforcing it is another, and enforcing it with the correct paperwork would be interesting if they tried to do anything else. But it's so the insecurity for Tom and his family is appalling, and that's why it was taken back into their arena to allow them to do the right thing. So his wife isn't sat there every night worrying that people are going to come around and take the property off them. I mean, it's an appalling situation. It's actually an act of terrorism. So if these clowns want to talk about terrorism, then we've only got to hold the mirror up to them and say that you're looking at the terrorists.
But of course, as important as Tom's case is, it's only one of many.
Yeah, it's one of thousands. This is going on in every city in this country every day of the week, and I don't say that lightly. Every day of the week, this is going on. We're getting calls, and we can't cope with the amount of people trying to communicate with us on this level. It's on an industrial scale. It's industrial, and it's going on throughout the whole country. So we've seen a pattern of all this stuff. We've seen a pattern of all the fake paperwork. We now understand a lot of the documents I showed you in January from the Westlaw site. I was on with Brian, which already had a court stamp, not a seal, but a stamp imprinted on them. We're now told that some of those sites have now got specimen through them. So they're even changing the documents there. So we've caught these people out, and it's time to fess up, boys, because this isn't going away. And the more and more people that are coming and asking questions, the more and more people are gaining. We're gaining on our side of this matter, because the whole thing's a charade, it's a farce, and they better come clean because the numbers are just growing too fast.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much, Guy. Now I'm going to just go to the quick ad for AV6, and when we come back, we'll have some more court-related news, which Guy may or may not want to comment on. And then we'll do the rest of the day's news. So we'll just show this, and I'll see you in a minute or so.
And so I've been watching and watching and watching, and 9/11 was just an incredible mind control event. You know, it was apparent to me then, as it is today, that people are literally mind controlled, that they're not actually thinking for themselves. Most of us are simply regurgitating.
We live in a bubble, and a lot of times, until you remove yourself from that bubble, you don't even know you're living in a bubble, in a kind of an information prison in the West.
But these guys have got a lot of money, and we complain about McDonald's and all that sort of thing. Do you know why they've got so much money? Because we fucking buy their shit. So it's time to stop it. You know, people say to me, where do we go? What's the first step? Stop supporting the companies that don't give a shit.
Be who you are. Don't police your thoughts, and don't police your expression. Express yourself, you know, but work for something positive. Express yourself in a positive way, you know. Create a better world because you're in it. Now, what is your legacy that you leave behind? Is the world better because you were here, or is it worse because you were here, or did you just not participate? You know, because you have to participate, you really do.
Okay, welcome back. Right, let's see what else is going on around the world and the country and the world. We've got the UK Supreme Court launching an on-demand video catch-up service. This is brilliant. So footage of hearings in the UK's highest court are going to be uploaded to its website in the next on the working day following any hearings, and they're going to be available to view for a year. The Supreme Court President Lord Neuberger, said that the service would allow people to see the background to decisions made in the court. Well, that's great. So, oh dear, though, they don't seem to have registered with ATVOD. Well, this is the Authority for Television on Demand. I'm sure they've just forgotten, or maybe it's because they don't consider themselves television-like or something. But anyway, okay, Supreme Court soon will be showing video on demand. Brilliant. Now, HSBC then. HSBC's pre-tax profits are up 4% as the drug money laundering bounces. The investment banking bounces back. Sorry about that slight mistake there. So pre-tax profits of $7.08 billion for the first 3 months of this year. So that's very nice for them. And HSBC says that they're going to make a decision pretty soon on whether they're going to move their headquarters out of the United Kingdom. Of course, those pre-tax profits, since they don't pay any tax, that's 4% profit, end of story, I suppose. 250 jobs would be moved if they move to take their headquarters out of the UK. And of course, they've been in this country since 1993 when they bought the Midland Bank. Well, I don't think anybody would be too sad to see them go. In the meantime, NATO, up to their old tricks as usual, and they are now running an anti-submarine warfare exercise in the North Sea. And this is really in response to all those bogus sightings of Russian submarines in the last few months. More than a dozen surface vessels, they say, with 4 submarines are participating in the annual Dynamic Mongoose exercise. 10 allies are joining this year. And for the first time, Sweden, which is not a member of NATO, but is considered a NATO partner, so whether that means they're going to be a member of NATO soon or not, I'm not sure, they're joining. The event is going to last 2 weeks. It's going to allow ships under NATO command to conduct a variety of anti-submarine warfare operations. So that's very nice. So Germany, Norway, Sweden, United States, UK, and apparently the UK's all four of our typhoons are going. No, sorry, that's not for this one. That's for another exercise that's going on at the moment, which we'll come on to in a second. Despite not being a part of NATO, neutral Sweden. So Sweden is neutral, but it is taking part in NATO exercises. So despite not being part of NATO, neutral Sweden's inclusion in the submarine exercise comes 6 months after it launched a large military operation when eyewitnesses reports suggested a Russian submarine was operating in the archipelago off Stockholm's Baltic coast. That's what they say. So anyway, where are our 4 RAF Typhoons going? Well, they're going to Estonia because Estonia has launched its largest ground exercises for many a time, and 13,500 personnel drawn up from allied NATO personnel, members of the Estonian Defence League and active military taking part in that. The chief of the Estonian military, Lieutenant General Rio Terras, said the purpose of the exercise, known as Hedgehog, is aimed at establishing a rapid response unit. That's nice. It's all aimed, of course, in reality, at keeping pressure on Russia. And as I say, we are sending all 4 of our RAF Typhoons. I think probably we have 1 or 2 more than that, but I'm not entirely sure. Right, Agenda 21 then. This is a spectacular piece of Agenda 21 propaganda in the New York Times. The end of California. So this was in Sunday's New York Times. This is the first news we've done this week, so that's why it's included. They're basically saying that they have to break the power of crony capitalist water gluttons called farmers, because they're producing about half the nation's fruit, nuts, and vegetables in California, and therefore this is the United States, of course, and therefore they've got to be dealt with. And this is Timothy Egan, who says, what will come then from this disrupting drought is likely to be a shift of power. The food industry is ripe for disruption. He says, now just about everyone in California knows that it requires a gallon of water to grow a single almond, or that agriculture accounts for 80% of the water used by humans here. Meanwhile, the cities have become leaders in conservation. Good for the cities. It takes 106 gallons of water to produce an ounce of beef, which is more than the average San Francisco Bay Area resident uses in a day. Mayor Eric Garcetti of Los Angeles wants to reduce the amount of water the city purchases by 50% in the next decade, cutting back through aggressive use of wastewater and conservation. It's outlandish, urban critics note, for big farm units to be growing alfalfa, which consumes about 20% of the state's irrigation water, or raising cattle in a place where a third of the rainfall of other states, and by exporting that alfalfa and other thirsty crops overseas, the state is essentially shipping its precious water to China, is what he says. So absolutely anti-farming, but of course, have a guess how many times the word fracking is used in this article. You got it, absolutely none. Fracking, of course, doesn't happen in California, according to the New York Times, or at least if it does, it doesn't use any water. So that's good then. But in the meantime, we've got to shut down the farming industry, stop feeding people, and move everybody into the cities where, of course, water is conserved and wastewater is reused, including all the drugs that it carries. Excellent stuff. Okay, and we're going to finish with the election in this country again, because the Telegraph here asking how the Fixed Term Parliaments Act would mean torture for Ed Miliband. Now, of course, we mentioned the Fixed Term Parliaments Act last week, and finally the Telegraph pointing it out as well. They're missing the point slightly, I think. What they say is the Fixed Term Parliament Act is a constitutional novelty. It's a novelty introduced by the coalition government in 2011. It was the consequence of the need to build trust between coalition partners and was agreed in haste by the negotiators, who were not especially well versed in the nation's constitutional arrangements, as Lord Norton put it. Sir Edward Lee deemed it a device to try and maintain a coalition and stop one part of a coalition ratting on the other. So we did mention it last week, but let's go over it again. What are the ways that what does this mean for government in this country? Well, basically, of course, it means that there's an election every 5 years, and it means that there are only now 3 ways that Parliament can be dissolved. The first one is when that 5-year period is up, as has happened this May. The second one is if the Commons votes for a dissolution, with 2/3 of the 650 members voting for an early dissolution. And the third option is that there would be a motion which states that this House has no confidence in Her Majesty's government. Now, since the first of those three is not an option until 2020, and the last is not an option since there won't be a government just straight after the election, because of course there'll be all kinds of backroom deals being done, then the second one is the only option. So we've now had, in this last 3 or 4 months, the longest campaign that no one was aware of, because the campaigning was going on in the back rooms. And following the result on Thursday or Friday, whenever we hear the result, we're going to have weeks of passing of brown envelopes while they try to do more backroom deals. And while these negotiations, in inverted commas, are going on, is there likely to be a dissolution of Parliament? It's not very likely. But so will the dissolution of Parliament come as a condition of a post-second election deal? Will it become a condition, of a post-second election deal? I actually think that's quite likely. So, in other words, the whips will control when Parliament is dissolved, and it could actually be months. Now, Ian Crane last night, and I'm going to show the Crane Report and Fracking Nightmare immediately after this programme on the live stream. Ian Crane last night was stating that he believes that the second election is going to come in the autumn, and that we're going to have a pretty unpleasant summer as a result. I think I'm not too far away from agreeing with him on that point. And the Fixed Term Parliament Act is absolutely part and parcel of that, because it restricts the situations under which Parliament can be dissolved. And it's not a great situation. The Telegraph were focusing, well, on other things. They did make the point about the three mechanisms for dissolving Parliament, but they weren't really interested in what happens in that immediate period after this election. A period of rainbow non-coalition, followed by what? That remains to be seen. Let's not forget who it was that actually brought the Fixed Term Parliament Act in. It was, of course, the Lord President of the Privy, Nick Clegg, because he was at that point in charge of the constitutional reform agenda. Okay, on that note, we'll leave you for today. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm hoping Justin Walker will be with us tomorrow, but that's still a bit in doubt. I'll let you know as soon as possible. Brian will be back on Thursday, but I'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock as usual. Bye for now.